For those of you who are fortunate enough to know that the Bill of Rights places limitations on government rather than government placing limitations on citizens, I'm sure you know just how vitally important that is. The most important phrase of our founding documents is "we the people," not "we the government," not "we the presidency," not "we the judicial or legislative branches," but "we the people." And for those of you who are fortunate enough to have had civics lessons when you were in high school and in college, you hopefully understand just how vitally important these rights are, these limitations on government are. Because without them, we would just be like any other nation. So welcome to the Vision of Veritas channel, the channel where we make it a point to point out the lies, deception, and the never-ending hypocrisy of the left. Our Constitution, our founding documents, our Bill of Rights, they are what set us apart from other nations. They are what distinguishes us from Canada, from Mexico, from the European countries, from Russia, from China, from the Asian and Eastern communist bloc countries, even the other democratic countries or so-called democratic countries. Our rights and government limitations are enshrined in our founding documents, and they aren't found anywhere else in this world. No other nation on this planet places limitations on government like we the people place limitations on our government. To better understand why we place these limitations on our government is better explained in another episode, but the long and the short of it is here, we place limitations on government because our founding documents, our founding fathers, despite their flaws, just like everybody has flaws, but our founding fathers valued the sovereignty of the individual above the ideals of a collective. The United States of America has been the greatest experiment of individual sovereignty that has never been tried in any other nation. That's why it is so alarming to see where we were and where we are today. I'm sure just about everybody knows that the United States government in some way, shape, or form tracks you. I mean, it's written into the Federal Communications Act of 1996 for those of you who don't know. This was before cell phones, at least cell phones as we understand them today. And it stated in the early 2000s and beyond, all cell phones must track their owners, regardless of your Fourth Amendment rights. You see, rights, they don't disappear all at once. They aren't here 1 minute and gone the next. They are incrementally taken away so you don't really notice what's going on over time. And that's pretty much what's been going on the past 100 years. We have slowly been ceding our sovereignty for the false ideals of safety and security. Instead of the sovereignty of the individual being important, with the exception of certain circumstances that fit the leftist political narrative, the sovereignty of the individual is actually being eroded, and the ideals of sovereignty superseding the notion of a collective is slowly fading away here. See, as a general rule of thumb here, oftentimes people don't care about specific situations until it affects them directly. They don't care about Group A losing something until Group B, which they are a part of, now subsequently loses something else. And that's what brings us to what we're going to be looking at today here. We're going to be looking at how Facebook has been spying on Americans' private messages and then reporting them to the FBI. In other words, a private entity has made a backroom deal with an all-powerful government to give them private messages which are supposed to be encrypted, unless, of course, they align with Facebook's political narrative, and we all know what that is. Now, I'm not justifying anything with this next statement, but as far as the messages that were reported, we aren't talking about, say, a terroristic threat level and above here. We're talking about political conversations. We're talking about anti-government or anti-authority statements, which are guaranteed to us under the First Amendment. Now, I'm not going to get into the private party or private company argument here. That's something that can be addressed in a different episode and why it does not apply here. Even if you still have doubts about the 2020 U.S. election, which a lot of people do, and there's a lot of justification for those concerns, those are all reported to the FBI. This begs the question, what is the real agenda here? Why is the government so concerned with your ability to think and talk freely, to question the official narrative that they throw in front of your face and you are forced to believe? You know, you're not allowed to think freely anymore. People don't know how to look at something critically, analyze it, and then come up with their own conclusion. The masses are now told what to believe, how to believe it, and if you don't believe it, you will be punished in some way, shape, or form, usually on a social level. Not that we all don't know, understand, and recognize the insane hypocrisy of the left, but the left as a whole can still bring into question and call the 2016 elections not legitimate and unlawful due to the bogus ideal of Russian interference and collusion, which has been proven through millions of dollars later as completely and unequivocally false. But anyone, and I mean anybody, who brings up questions about the 2020 election, to which the questions are incalculable, is refused to be allowed in a court of law and through the most popular means of internet communication, i.e. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You are immediately shut down if you're caught talking about it. And in this case, you're even reported to the FBI. It's not enough for them to squash free speech under the guise of a private company, but they have to take it several steps further and actually report your private conversations, which again are supposed to be end-to-end encrypted, unable for them to be viewed, and handed right over to the FBI. Just because you have a dissenting opinion about the political narrative that is being forced down your throat. Now, to get into this particular operation that Facebook had going on with the FBI a little bit deeper, it was reported that somebody at Facebook had red flagged these supposedly subversive private messages over a period of about 19 months or so and transmitted them in a redacted form to a quote-unquote domestic terrorism unit at the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. And the really problematic part about this is they did it without any kind of a subpoena. Your Fourth Amendment rights were eviscerated here. And it goes on further to say that Facebook and the FBI were specifically looking at conservative right-wing individuals. They were not looking at Antifa or BLM or any of the organizations that actually have caused legitimate destruction here in the United States. Billions of dollars in damages in private and public property. But oh no. Instead of anything like that being reported, what was reported was private conversations that were dissenting about the current political narrative, which is guaranteed to us under the Bill of Rights, not only as free speech, but our Fourth Amendment rights of illegal searches and seizures. To quote Miranda Devine, who wrote this article under the New York Post, the Facebook users whose private communications Facebook had red flagged as domestic terrorism for the FBI were all conservative right-winged individuals. They were gun-toting, red-blooded Americans who were angry after the election and shooting off their mouths and talking about staging protests. There was nothing criminal, nothing about violence or massacring or assassinating anyone. Let me repeat that. There was nothing criminal, nothing about violence or massacring or assassinating anybody within the confines of all of these messages. The article further goes on to say once they were flagged, the private messages were farmed out to leads in FBI field offices around the country. They in turn would reach out to the area's U.S. attorney's offices to legally obtain the private conversations that they had already been shown. So in reality, they already had these private messages, but technically they had to have probable cause to have the messages, which indicates they knew what they were doing was illegal to begin with. So in actuality, they were given just enough of a message to wet their lips or to get them interested, so to speak. They in turn would reach out to get a subpoena because they knew what they were doing was unlawful. So they had to officially get the messages that they had already obtained illegally and make it look like they had gotten them legally through official channels. And once Facebook received the request, they would end up sending gigabytes of data about the individual back to the FBI, even though everything was illegally obtained and obtained under false pretenses. So in reality, you only have the privilege of private messages so long as your messages toe the company line, so long as you communicate within the confines of the narrative you are given. This entire operation is essentially another witch hunt against conservatives. The FBI even said it was a complete and utter waste of their time, as there wasn't anything to prosecute. You know, Facebook denied that this even took place. The only problem is the two official statements that they gave. They contradicted each other less than 1 hour apart. They said, these claims are false because they reflect a misunderstanding of how our systems protect people from harm and how we engage with law enforcement. We carefully scrutinize all government requests for user information to make sure they're legally valid and narrowly tailored, and we often push back. We respond to legal requests for information in accordance with applicable law and our terms, and we provide notice to users whenever permitted, said Erica Saxon, a spokesperson at Facebook's parent company, Meta. Now, on its face, we know that's a bunch of bull. How can Facebook carefully scrutinize something to give to the government when it's volunteering your personal information, your personal messages, which are supposed to be encrypted? Now onto their updated statement, which was issued to the public in under an hour after the first one. See if you can notice the differences here. These claims are just wrong. The suggestion that we seek out people's private messages for anti-government language or questions about the validity of past elections and then proactively supply those to the FBI is plainly inaccurate, and there is zero evidence to support it, said Sakin, the DC-based crisis response expert who previously worked for the Planned Parenthood and Obama for America, and she now leads Facebook's communications on counterterrorism and dangerous organizations and individuals. The FBI officially would neither confirm or deny the allegations, but did acknowledge that the agency has a relationship with social media companies that enable a quick exchange, quote, quick exchange of information and an ongoing dialogue. So, in other words, Facebook's saying that it doesn't proactively provide the FBI with user data without a subpoena or search warrant. If that's true, that would indicate that the first transfer that is done person to person at the company who's designated as a confidential human source by the FBI, who in turn is someone with authority to access and search users' private messages, a blatant violation of your rights. Facebook then in turn would have plausible deniability if questions arose about the misuse of users' data, and its employees' confidentiality would be protected by the FBI. According to one of the DOJ's sources, they had the ability to search and were able to pinpoint specific conversations from millions of conversations. Also, remember that in late August, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg let Joe Rogan know that the FBI warned the company about Russian propaganda right before the Hunter Biden story broke, which then the company just so happened to censor very aggressively. The evidence couldn't be more clear that they are working hand in hand to affect a particular narrative. But the question remains, why? Remember, the FBI said in an official statement, the FBI maintains relationships with U.S. private sector entities, including social media providers. The FBI has provided companies with foreign threat indicators to help them protect their platforms and customers from abuse by foreign influence actors. U.S. companies have also referred information to the FBI with investigative value relating to foreign influence. The FBI closely works with interagency partners as well as state and local partners to ensure we're sharing information as it becomes available. This can include threat information, actionable leads, or indicators. The FBI has also established relationships with a variety of social media and technology companies and maintains the ongoing dialogue to enable a quick exchange of threat information. It's also reported that there are more FBI whistleblowers that are willing to come forward to expose what's actually going on within the agency there. And quite honestly, I say it's about time. It's about time the FBI remember that its allegiance is to the Constitution of the United States, not to a man, not to a political party, and not to a specific narrative perpetuated by a political party. It's to the Constitution of the United States and nothing else. I'll wrap this up today with this. One of the sources that came forward at the FBI said the most frightening thing is the combined power of big tech colluding with the enforcement arm of the FBI. Google, Facebook, Twitter, these companies are globalist companies. They do not have our national interests at heart. In other words, their allegiance is to a leftist narrative globalist agenda that cedes sovereignty of the individual and gives rise to a powerful collective that is controlled from the top down. If there is a simplistic takeaway to all this, it's that we as United States citizens, as American patriots, need to be ever vigilant about the information that we consume, about what our children consume, the information that they hear in schools and homes and around their friends. We need to make sure that we filter out the lies and deception that the left so prevalently tries to shove down our throats and pass off as the truth, no matter what it is. Remember, according to them, you aren't allowed to question, you aren't allowed to think for yourself, you aren't allowed to think critically anymore. You are only allowed to listen and to obey. And because this is the way it is nowadays, you need to make sure that you are always consuming the truth. Thank you for sticking around for this longer episode, and if you found something interesting or something that you can glean from this, please like, share, and subscribe, as I'd really appreciate it. Once again, thank you for tuning in and take care.